Hello again, my name is Sam Osborne, and it's my pleasure to teach you about the wonderful world of Lottie animations. So I am a full-stack developer, however I've been working with Lottie for around 2 years now, creating animations as well as open source projects surrounding Lottie, most notably Lottie Interactive, which we'll be using later on in the course. Seeing as this course is focused on Lottie, and specifically creating animations for Lottie and integrating them onto websites, I won't be going into animation, illustration, and design fundamentals. As for the technical side, very simple HTML and JavaScript are needed, and it's going to be explained along the way. So even if you're not a programmer, it's going to be very simple to follow along, I promise. Alright, that's it for introductions. Let's get started. So, why use Lottie? Well, to answer that question, we need to know about the alternatives available today for animated and interactive content. One of those solutions is to use one of the many JavaScript libraries where you can manually code animations. The problem with this, as you can imagine, is that it's going to be very time consuming to create animations by hand. You'll also run into problems where these animations won't be cross-platform because you've written them in JavaScript, so they won't be easily ported to Android and iOS. Your second option is to use GIFs or PNG sequences. However, these file formats will take up a lot of space in memory, they won't be scalable, won't necessarily play at 60 FPS, and so your user experience is going to be pretty poor. On the other hand, you have Lottie animations, which are playing at 60 FPS. They're scalable because they render as SVGs, so scalable vector graphics. We can add interactions because we have control over the player, and the exported file size of a Lottie animation are very small, mostly a few kilobytes per animation. Lottie has made a lot of big improvements on the whole pipeline, from animating to deploying on different platforms, and that's why it's gaining so much popularity and is such a useful tool for animated and interactive content today. In this lesson, I'll be showing you some great use cases of Lottie animations, as well as the Lottie Files platform and some of the tools they've developed. We can't talk about Lottie without talking about Lottie Files. Lottie Files is the biggest community-driven platform for Lottie animations. Thousands of animations are free for download, submitted by users. Lottie Files also creates tools for aiding in debugging and testing Lottie animations. Their After Effects plugin will allow you to quickly see how your animation will render as a Lottie, without having to leave After Effects, saving a lot of time. And if you download their app, you can test your uploaded animations on your phone very easily. They've also created a web player to help integrate animations simply. We'll be checking this out later on. One of the most useful tools in my opinion is the Lottie editor. It allows you to change the colors of your shape layers without having to go back into After Effects, saving a lot of time. As you can see, we can quickly change the colors of our shape layers and then download them as a new animation. This is great if you've downloaded an animation from the platform and need to change its colors to suit your brand's needs, or you just need to quickly change the colors of your own animations. Lottie animations are slowly being integrated into everyday apps. For example, Twitter use Lottie animations for their heart button and can easily swap it out for when events are happening, such as the launch of the PS5. Uber Eats are also using Lottie animations for when your food is being prepared, and Google Home for when the app is launching. Lottie animations can keep users interested and create a fresh experience with motion. Even when you have to wait on simple things like connecting to Wi-Fi, they can make the experience enjoyable. Now we're going to take a look at various interactions possible with Lottie animations. It's possible to sync Lottie animations with scrolling on the page, and a great example of this is a website found by Samuel Day, which uses a single Lottie weighing 700 kilobytes and takes you on a trip adventure down the webpage. Syncing the animation with the cursor is also possible, both vertically and horizontally. And then we have more simple interactions. For example, this lottie animation playing when the page scrolls down. And then we have more basic animations such as hovering, clicking, morphing, which is a special type where the animation goes halfway whilst you're on hover and then plays in reverse when the cursor goes off the animation. And switch is the same thing but using a click. All these interactions are simple to implement onto a website thanks to various JavaScript libraries. We will be going over these later on in the course. In this lesson, I'll be going over the entire Lottie pipeline and showing you the steps needed to create Lottie animations. Lottie animations start their lives out as Illustrator files. They can come in many different shapes and sizes. Once the Illustrator file is ready, it's imported into After Effects, and its different layers converted to shape layers. Once we're satisfied with the animation, a plugin called Body Moving is used and exports our animation into a .json file. A .json file is a file format used to store data and is readable for humans. Inside it, we can find our different layers and their attributes. We then give this .json file to the Lottie player on our platform of choice. Lottie will then read the .json and draw the animation on the screen. To quickly recap, we export animations from Adobe After Effects as .json files using the Body Moving plugin. This exported file is then used by Lottie to display our animation on screen. On airbnb.io/Lottie, you can find this page of supported After Effects features which I highly recommend reading up on before you start making Lottie animations, as it will save a lot of time and confusion when you find out your animation is broken due to using an unsupported effect for your platform of choice. As you can see, native functionalities of After Effects are supported, such as shapes, fills, strokes, transforms, and masks. Basically, you have to learn to animate without using effects. However, plugins such as joysticks and sliders, rubber hose, and Duik do work with Lottie to a certain degree, which I've noticed works mostly well on animations used on the web. My advice on getting animations working on the most platforms consistently is to stick to using alpha mattes, trim paths, path morphing, and basic expressions such as loop in and loop out. If you're using more complicated expressions, you can try and bake them to keyframes. One thing to take into account as well is the exported file size of the Lottie, which will be larger with longer and more complex animations using lots of layers, and they won't necessarily play without lagging. Even with these limitations in place, it's still possible to create great looking animations. In this lesson, we'll be installing two plugins for After Effects. Body Moving, which exports our animations as .json files, and an optional second one from Lottie files, which allows us to quickly visualize our Lotties and upload them to our Lottie files account. Alright guys, so let's get into installing some plugins. So first of all, I'm going to install Body Moving, which is the original plugin for Lottie. So I'm just going to type Body Moving Adobe Exchange, and this is the easiest way I think to install this plugin. So we're going to open it up and click on Install Now, and it should launch the Creative Cloud. And then from here you can click Install and it should be installed straight to your After Effects. I've already got it installed, so that's why I can't do it. Now let's do the same thing but for the Lottie Files app. Well, the Lottie Files plugin, sorry. It's the same process. And this is a optional plugin, but I highly recommend it for the productivity gain you'll get from having this plugin, as you'll be able to see your Lottie animations directly inside of After Effects and see how they render as Lottie animations, because sometimes what is happening in After Effects doesn't necessarily convert into a Lottie because of different effects that aren't supported and things like that. So having this plugin, you're able to directly see them as Lotties without having to drag and drop them into a website and things like that. So you'll save a lot of time. So we're just going to do Install Now, and the same thing as before in the Creative Cloud, get it installed. So now that we've got them both installed, we can go into After Effects, and here I've got an animation of my umbrella. And then we just need to click on Window, Extensions, and let's start with Body Moving. So let's crack it open. And here we've got our comp, the umbrella, it's selected, and we've got an output path. So I'm going to output it to my desktop. There are settings which I will be going over later on. So here we just click render, and then preview, current renders, umbrella, and there we go. And we can change its background color, for example, to a nice purple. And yeah, it's as simple as that. So that's our lottie. And if we open up the file that is generated, which I'm just searching for now, text edit, we've got our lottie file. So one single JSON file is generated, and with this we can use it on the web or on mobile, and Lottie will read this file and create our animation on screen. So that's one way to export your Lottie animation. The second way is to use the Lottie Files plugin. So you will need an account on their website. Lottie Files. There we go. So here we've got our current compositions. You can also check out your previews on your account. So here we go. And the more public animations available. So let's go back to the comp, click on umbrella. It'll render it out. And we can see the render graph. So the usage. And then change the background color quickly. And then when we render it out, you can also see it on the Lottie Files mobile app. So if we click upload, it'll render it and upload it to our Lottie Files account. And now that that's done, you can click on show QR code, and either on iOS or on Android, you can scan this code and see how the animation runs on your mobile phone. So if we click here, you can see, if you click on previews, my blue umbrella is there. If I open up Lottie Files, you can also see it through the website, clicking on my previews and having it appear here. So that is Body Moving and Lottie Files plugin. So now that we've got our plugins installed, I'm going to be going over some of Body Moving settings. So in Body Moving, it allows us to export fonts to shapes using this option, using the glyphs option. You can also have the hidden layers included inside your JSON file when exported. So if, for example, this image was hidden, normally this wouldn't be exported to the JSON file, but with this option clicked, it will be included inside the JSON file. Next, we have the same but for guide layers. So guide layers are when you shape and then create guide layer. So the same as a previous option. If this is a guide layer, normally they're not exported to the JSON file. However, with this option clicked, it will be exported to the JSON file. And then next we have extra comps. So if, for example, we had an expression here which linked to the city1 comp, you'd have to click this and then click on city1 for the expression to work. So here we have assets, and this is an important option, so that's why I created this little demo. Original asset names. This will keep the image names as you've labeled them in After Effects, otherwise Body Moving will generate names for them. Copy original assets, we'll use the actual project source files. Then we've got an option for compression, so how much compression you want to apply to the images. And the next option is including JSON. And this is an important option. Basically, if you click this, the images will be encoded inside the JSON file. If it's not ticked, they will be exported to a separate assets file. So the thing is, if they're encoded inside the JSON file is going to become a lot larger. So let's try that out. So if I do include in JSON, include in JSON file, save, and then desktop exports, call it city, and render that out. That's going to create one single JSON file, and we're going to have the images inside it, and we'll be able to see them. So I'm just getting the, actually I can close that down. So in here we have one JSON, which is 2 megs, so it's quite large for a lottie file, and we can just drag and drop that. And now we have our animation. So the other option, if we, where is it? Assets. If we don't include it, let's see what happens. So, all right, let's save that and call it city2, and render that. All right, okay. So now we've got a JSON file and we've got an image folder. So if you drag and drop the lottie, we will see what happens. And as you can see, the images are missing because it's linking to this folder of images. To fix that, you can actually create a zip together and then upload that, and that should work. So there we go, we've got our images back. So it's up to the users really. The easiest way to share them is to write them and encode them inside the JSON file, but that'll make larger file sizes. Otherwise, don't encode them and have a smaller lottie, but you'll have an images folder basically. So assets. So that's for this option, including JSON. Skip images, they won't re-render the images if they've not changed. And then include video and audio. This is experimental, so it won't work on the default players basically, but it will include video and audio assets inside the JSON file. Next we have export modes. So standard mode, it exports as a single JSON file. Split will split the animation up into multiple JSON files. So if we have a 10-second animation and select one, that'll export the animation as 10 JSON files every 1 second. Next we have demo, which exports the animation as a HTML file. And so you can double click it and it'll open up in your default browser and you can see the animation. Next we have report, which will create a report of the animation. Rive, which will export it for a Rive project. And standalone, which exports the player and the animation inside a single JavaScript file. And this option we have banner. And I've not used this before, but apparently it's for Google Ads. And it will export it as a big bundle, as a zip file with your animation and the players inside it. And then you have a few extra options such as looping and how many loops you want it to do. Next we have AVD, and this will export, instead of a JSON file, it will export it as an XML file, so you can use it for Android. Okay, let's move on to expressions. So for this option, convert expressions to keyframes. It'll save you from using the After Effects option, basically using Keyframe Assistant. And I'll show the results of that quickly. So here I'm going to quickly demonstrate the convert expressions to keyframes option. So if I don't have it clicked, This has got a wiggle expression on it, so it's wiggling around. If the option isn't ticked, we're gonna render it out and preview it. And as you can see, it's glitching everywhere. So let's go on to settings and then convert the expression to keyframes. Save that, render it out, preview it. And it's what we've got on screen. So that's a lot better. So if you're using expressions, click this option, obviously. But it won't necessarily work for overcomplicated expressions. So it's worth to just give it a try. And then after that, we have extend conversion beyond work area. So this will convert the keyframes that are beyond the work frame simply. And the next one is remove expression properties. So this will remove one's properties that aren't used for expressions. Next, we have some more advanced settings. So export old JSON format. This is for when you can't update your lottie player necessarily. Trim unused keyframes and layers. It will remove unused layers and keyframes. Skip default properties, which will optimize your file and make it smaller, because things like the anchor points and opacity won't be included inside the JSON file. Next, we have include non-supported properties. So this goes back to effects that aren't supported by Lottie yet. So for example, if I take a slider, for example, and then you, for example, link, for example, if I take a slider and link it to this position, sliders aren't managed by Lottie, so this won't be exported inside the JSON file. However, if I do click this option, it will be exported inside the JSON file, basically. Next, we have pretty print. So this will make the JSON file readable instead of it being all in a big blob without any spaces. And then we have audio. So this will export the audio layers. So there we go. Now we've got body moving and Lottie files installed. We have got all the plugins we need to start creating Lottie animations. Let's take a look at some of the best practices for Illustrator when it's used to create the foundations of our Lottie animations. I would say that creating icons and illustrations for Lottie isn't very different from how you would usually create them. However, there are some things to take into consideration. As usual, using a grid is important to help maintain consistency across your icons and animations. This is especially more important for when you're creating multiple icons for a same website, for example. My second piece of advice would be creating layers for every shapes and naming them just for cleanliness, but also creating shapes for masks that you think you're going to be using in After Effects. So here, for example, I created this rectangle as I'm going to be using it for an inverted mask on the letterbox. When the flag drops down, it's going to hide the letterbox. For the sizes, I recommend using bigger sizes as it'll be easier to animate on After Effects. This is a 512 pixel by 512 pixel document, and I generally use a 20 pixel stroke width. I recommend using bigger sizes in Illustrator as you won't have problems with anti-aliasing inside of After Effects. However, there is a workaround with this. So say we've created a 24 by 24 pixel icon inside of Illustrator and imported it into After Effects. So as you can see, we got 24 by 24 and it's not anti-aliasing the same way it did in Illustrator. And as you can imagine, this is going to be a bit of a pain to animate inside of After Effects. It's going to look fine in Lottie as a Lottie, but as I said, to work on it, it's going to be a bit of a pain. So what we can do to get around this is create a solid, the size of the comp. So 24 by 24, make comp size. And then we're going to parent our icon to this solid. And then we can scale up our composition. And then scale up the solid. So go transform and fit to comp. And now we can easily work with our icon and we can clearly see what's going to happen to it. So we can animate this, and once we're finished, we can then just revert back to our 24x24 and do the same again with our solid, transform, fit to comp. And then this will be animated in our smaller size. So that's a quick way of getting around using smaller icons and animating them in After Effects. My last few best practices for Illustrator are about effects. So distort and transform effects work on the paths, and therefore they can be pretty easily imported into After Effects without a problem and used on Lottie afterwards. However, I would stay clear of the rest of the effects that have trouble being imported into After Effects, because if they can't be easily imported into After Effects, they definitely won't work with Lottie. And for things like gradients and drop shadows, don't create them inside of Illustrator, create them inside of After Effects, and they work with Lottie. However, check your target platform to see if gradients and drop shadows are supported. So I don't think creating icons and illustrations for Lottie is necessarily very different from how you'd usually do them. The only drawback is that most of the effects you won't be able to use. In this lesson, we'll be creating a plug icon inside of Adobe Illustrator and getting it ready for animation inside of After Effects. Let's get to creating our icon. So I'm going to start off with creating the bits that go into the wall. I don't know what they're called, so I'm just going to do that and take that down to 2 stroke width, and this is going to be the prong left, and let's duplicate that layer and make it right. Drag it over like so, and I'm just going to round off the top corner and do the same for this one. And then I'm going to create the plug top. As always, creating a layer for every shape. And I'm going to create another rectangle, put that there, and then round the corners off again. So this is going to be an EU plug, so sorry for the Americans, feel free to make an American plug. And let's call plug middle. So the plug middle is going to be another rectangle. And I've just noticed that they aren't the same length. Oops. So let's just drag that. Okay, back to the middle. Another rectangle. And let's do it about about there. Because then we're going to round the corners again. Something like that. It's looking a bit chunky, I think. Maybe. Doesn't really matter. Plug middle, and then plug bottom, and another rectangle. Let's do it like that. Do it like that, and won't go all the way. Okay, that's good. And then we're going to create the cable. And for the cable, we're just going to draw a line. There we go. Lovely. Okay, so I like my animations in 20 stroke width. So I'm just going to see what it looks like. That looks pretty good. I like that. Yeah, that looks good. Now we can save these and get ready for After Effects. So before that, I'm just going to double check. So I've got all my layers ready, and I'm just going to name this guide layer, lock that. And so this is going to be the initial state and then the morphed state. All right, let's save that. And we are now ready to hop into After Effects and get animating. Great, so now that we have got our icon, we can import it, get it set up, and get ready for animating. So we're going to start by importing our Illustrator file. And so let's import it as a composition and open it up. So now what we need to do is select all of the layers and create shape layers from vector layers. And then we can delete all these Illustrator layers. Okay, and we can also delete this folder. Okie dokie. So now that we've got that done, we can start preparing the anchor points and prepping the file for animation. So very quickly, nothing complicated. Just going to move these around. And I'm going to put this one to the top because I have some plans for it in the animation. And then the cable shouldn't be too fussy. There we go. And now I'm going to create a null object and parent everything to it. So this is more for the animation, just so everything's grouped to one object. It'll make it easier for animating it because we're just going to be moving its position and its rotation. So that can all go onto one object. Great. So now that that's done, we can quickly check how it's rendering as a lottie just to be sure that everything's all right. So let's grab that, render it out. And great, that seems perfectly fine. No problems there. Okay, we are now set up and ready to animate. In this lesson, we're going to be animating our plug and creating two versions of it. A seamlessly looping version and another one ready for the morphing interaction type. Awesome, so now that we're set up, we can start the fun part, which is animating. So let's get started with animating the position of the plug. And I'm going to keyframe the start and the end at 2 seconds. And so when the user hovers the cursor, it's going to go upwards. So let's create a keyframe at frame 20. And okay, let's do that. And then push it up. That seems good. Now we can also animate the path of the cable quite simply, just so it grows in length, and drag that down. Okay, that's great. Let's create a keyframe here, just at the end position, so it stays in place for a while whilst it's plugged in. Okay, that's fine. So let's add a little bit of rotation to it as well. So at frame 0 and 20 is going to be straight, but I'm going to try and get it to whip out a little bit. So perhaps at frame 10 we can get it on a slight angle and then clip it back in place. Okay, let's add some easing to all of this. That seems nice. Next, let's just go into the graph editor for the position quickly and add some influence to this. Let's try 80. Seems alright. Quite like that. And the same for the other end. Okay. I think pulling out, I won't rotate it. I think I'll just leave it to go straight out. So that looks good. I want to add some scaling to it when it plugs in. So when it gets there, okay, so that's unlinked. And okay, so it's going to scale everything. Therefore, let's put a very limited amount of scaling on it. So I think I'm going to do 100 when it snaps in, and then perhaps 98 at frame 25, and then 102 at frame 30, and then 5 frames later it'll settle back down. So it might look a bit like jelly, but we shall see. Yep, looks like jelly. Okay, so I don't really want the top bar the plug top to wiggle around so much. So I might just put the anchor point all the way up there, and that might solve it. Okay, not really. It's a bit better. What can we do? Perhaps making it start wiggling just before. That might be a better solution. It's not too bad. It's just very subtle, really. I think it's happening a bit too fast though, so I'm just going to space these out a bit. And yeah, let's just go a bit further out, 40, and then perhaps 35, and then 25. I usually don't do these many frames when doing like these sort of wiggle effects, but it should dampen it a bit. That seems alright. Might just add a bit more scaling, so go down a notch. That might be a bit too much. 96, 104. Yeah. Okay, I know what I can do. I can not go as far on this one, so that it doesn't leave the top of the comp. Perhaps I should just drag it, yeah. That looks kind of weird. Let's keep a very short amount of scaling. How does it look like in here? Just play around with this a bit. Okay. How's looking. Not bad. It's kind of... because when it plugs in, it needs to go down. I think even if it does, or maybe I know I can perhaps push it up a bit more. That's it. Okay, I'm happy with that. I am happy with that. Let's look what it looks like as a lottie. So quickly open lottie files and let's render it out. Ooh. It's very zoomed in. What's my comp size? Yeah, it's okay, I can see it's dragging down a little bit. Because that's, yeah, it's not the same position, so that's why. Let's refresh that. Ooh. That looks good. I like that. Okay. Okay. So that's our looping version. So this is obviously a seamless loop, which is very nice. And to create a morphed effect or morphed interaction, you need to create a duplicate of this. So let's just duplicate the comp, plug morph. For morphing interaction, you need to stop it at the halfway point, basically. So the halfway point for this animation is when it's plugged in, and you can delete all of the keyframes. You can delete all of the keyframes that are extra. So that's done. It helps reduce the file size. And so the user hovers the cursor, it's going to play. And then when they release it, it's going to pull back out. So now that we've finished our animation, we can quickly open lottie files and render it out. You can upload it for safekeeping, but mostly save it to PC because we're going to be using it as our animations on the website. So I'm going to call that plugin, and let's do the same for the morph. So I applied that with a white background. Save to PC, plug in morph. Simple as that. Now that we've finished animating our plug and exported it as a lottie, this animation is now ready to be integrated onto websites or mobile apps. Lottie animations can be integrated onto a wide variety of platforms today. Web, iOS, Android, and even no-code solutions like Webflow have great support for lottie animations. You can even get them running on Apple Watch. Over the next few lessons, however, we're going to be looking on how we can integrate lottie animations onto the web and interact with them. At the moment, two different libraries exist that give us interactive possibilities. The web player by Lottie Files allows us to play animations onto our web page. However, if we add on the library Lottie Interactivity, this gives us possibilities like playing animations synced to the scroll or to the cursor. Another library, Lottie Interactive, written by myself, allows you to have interactions such as on-click, on-hover, and more subtle ones, like playing an animation when it appears on the screen. First off, we're going to check out the tools by Lottie Files, and then we're going to get started with Lottie Interactive. Over the course of the next few lessons, we're going to be making this website a little bit more exciting and dynamic using Lottie animations. We'll cover how to sync the animation with the scroll wheel, the cursor position, as well as having interactions such as on-click, on-hover, morphing, and playing the animation on-show. The Lottie web player is a lottie animation player based upon the original player from Airbnb. It's designed to be easily integrated into websites and play animations from local files or from the Lottie Files platform. To get started, head over to Lottie Files and find an animation you like. Then copy the Lottie animation URL, close the window, and head over to Tools, Web Player. Once you're here, paste the Lottie URL into the box and watch your animation load. You have control over a few of the settings, but I'm going to keep my play mode on normal, the direction forward, and a transparent background. For the width and height, I'm going to set a width of 90% and a height of 90%. You can then choose which controls you want over your animation. I'm going to hide the controls. I'm going to leave autoplay and loop on my animation. Next, copy the script link and head over to your source code. In my index.html, I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the page and include the player script. Then you can copy the second part of the code and place it into your web page wherever you want the animation to be positioned. In my case, I'm going to be positioning it here to the right of my introduction text. Then you can open up your web page and see how the animation plays. If you want to change the width and the height of the animation, simply modify the star attribute, and you can either use pixels or a page percentage. And then, if you want to change the other settings, you can add attributes or remove them, depending on your needs. You can also access the speed and use a hexadecimal value for the background color. For the source of the animation, you can either use a URL to an animation on the Lottie Files platform or a link to a local file. And that's as simple as it gets with including animations with the Lottie web player. As you can see, it's pretty simple and all it takes is 2 lines of code. In this lesson, we're going to be using Lottie Interactivity. Lottie Interactivity is a JavaScript library developed by Lottie Files, which adds interactions onto the existing web player. We're going to be syncing an animation to the scrolling of the page. Lottie Interactivity aims to bring interactions to the Lottie web player we used in the previous lesson. To get started, copy the script source located here and paste it at the bottom of your page just under the Lottie web player. If you didn't follow the previous lesson and don't have the Lottie player at the bottom of your page, head over to Lottie Files and under Tools, Web Player, and copy this line of code into your web page. Next, all you have to do is find an animation you like, and as we're going to be doing the scrolling interaction, a perfect example of this is this lighthouse animation. You can then click on the interactivity button. This will then open up the interactivity guide with the animation you chose, and with examples of how to get started with the various interactions. In this lesson, we're going to be using the sync Lottie with scroll. So let's get started. Let's start off with copying the Lottie play code that's been generated for us. Head over to your web page and include it wherever you want on your website. Notice here there's now an ID. I'm going to go and rename this to Lighthouse. Once that's done, you can then copy the script code and paste it at the bottom of your page just under the include of Lottie Interactivity. If you changed your ID, make sure you change it here as well under the player attribute. You can then reload your page and observe your interactive Lottie. And as you can see, the lighthouse is playing on scroll. So that's pretty neat. A better way to do this would be to separate your interactivity code from the index.html. So to do that, under Assets, GS, I'm going to create a new JavaScript file and call this Interactions. I'm then going to copy the generated code and paste it into this file. This is totally optional, but it's a way to keep your HTML files cleaner. And then under Lottie Interactivity, I'm going to include this file. So I'm going to go script, source, and then assets, JS, interactions. Once that's done, you can just reload and the interaction should work just as it did before. And just like that, we've added a lottie animation to our website and linked it with the scroll. In this lesson, we're going to be syncing two animations to the position of the cursor. So for the moment, we've included a looping animation using the Lottie Files web player, as well as syncing up a lighthouse animation to the scrolling of the page. Next up, we're going to implement two more animations that are going to be synced to the cursor position. Before getting started, if you weren't following the previous lessons, you're going to need to include the Lottie player script as well as Lottie interactivity onto your web page. And here we created interactions.js, which is holding all our Lottie interactivity code for the sake of cleanliness. Okay, let's get started with these two animations. My two animations are going to be this zipping emoji and the eye rolling emoji. So like before, I'm going to click on interactivity and check out the generated code, and I'm going to scroll down until I can find the cursor interaction. So here we are, and this is the result. So as you can see, the animation is playing on the movement of the cursor on it, so up and down and left and right. So that's quite nice. I'm going to copy the Lottie player and paste it into my web page. So eye roll animation, I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to change the ID of the player, just call it eye roll. And then we need to copy the Lottie interactivity code and paste it into interactions. So change the player ID, and for some reason, I'm not sure why, this type needs to be changed to seek because we're using the cursor. I'm not sure why, but on this page it generated it as loop. That's never happened to me before, but I just noticed it now. So now that we've got the Lottie interactivity code and the player included on our HTML page, I can go and refresh my website. And voila, we now have our animation. And it's synced up to the cursor position. So this is working up and down and left and right. But if you just want horizontal movement, there's another way to do it. So I'm going to open up the zipper emoji and click on interactivity as well, and repeat the same process. So going down to the correct interaction, and as you can see, sync animation with the horizontal cursor movement. And I think the zipper emoji was a pretty good fit for this interaction type. So like before, I'm going to copy the player and paste it onto my HTML, rename its ID, and copy the generated code. Change its player ID, and here, as you can see, it's generated seek as well for some reason. So, oh no, that's okay, that's correct. So that's good. We can keep the positions as they are. And as you can see, there's another position object, whatever actions object, sorry, which is containing the positions. So -1 and -1 for the X and Y. The type is stop and the frames is set to 0. So this means that when the cursor goes outside of the animation container, it's going to stop the animation at frame 0. And then whilst we're inside it, it's going to play the animation from frames 0 to 60. And this can actually be changed. So if you wanted to stop it halfway, you could do 0 to 30, but I want it to play from frames 0 to 60, so I'm going to leave it as it was. And all we have to do now is refresh the page, go back down, and there you have it. You've just integrated Lottie animations and synced them up with the cursor position. Great stuff. In this lesson, I'm going to be introducing you to Lottie Interactive, which we'll be using over the course of the next few lessons to add some great micro interactions onto our website. Lottie Interactive is a JavaScript library developed by myself, which allows you to implement interactive Lottie animations with one line of HTML. Lottie Interactive allows you to loop your animations or play them on hover, on click, morphing, and switch. To get started, head over to the Lottie Interactive GitHub page by finding the link on svgenius.co or by simply typing Lottie Interactive GitHub. Once you're there, you can read up on all the available interactions, as well as things called attributes. Attributes allow you to do some really powerful things, such as changing the stroke width and the stroke color of your animation on the fly in HTML. To get started with Lottie Interactive, we're going to copy the script source and paste it at the bottom of our web page. In this lesson, I'm going to be integrating an animated logo onto our website. So for that, I'm going to head up to the header part of our page and declare a Lottie Interactive element. I'm then going to declare the path to the animation. Before going any further, I just want to quickly touch on this path attribute. For me, I can use a local path, so assets, animations, and svgenius logo. And this will work for me because the tool I'm using, which is called WebStorm, to edit this text, actually creates a web server when I open it up. So this is going to work for me. If you're using a simple text editor to edit this HTML, if you go into Finder and open up your page, you'll see that the animation isn't there and hasn't loaded. To get around this, you can upload your animation onto Lottie files and inside your previews, copy the asset link. Once that's copied, you can paste it as your path, reload your page, and your animation will appear. And then I'm going to declare the interaction I want. Because this is a logo, I'm going to be using the play once interaction and adding the autoplay attribute, so it plays when the page is loaded. Once that's done, I can just reload my page, and the animated logo is playing once the page is loaded. And that's your first step using Lottie Interactive. Over the course of the next few lessons, we're going to be implementing a few more interactions. Let's get started with replacing the static icons with some animated and interactive Lottie ones. So if you haven't already included Lottie Interactive onto your web page, head over to the GitHub page of Lottie Interactive, copy the script tag, and paste it at the bottom of your web page. Alright, let's get to replacing these icons. So I'm going to head up to where they are in HTML. I'm going to delete the old static one and start by declaring a Lottie Interactive element. I'm then going to declare its path, so assets, animations, and stacks rotate.json. And then I'm going to set the interaction type. So this is going to be on click. So I'm going to type click. And as simple as that, we should have our animated icon. There we go. And it's playing on click. Because this animation uses only a stroke width that is black, I can grab the website theme color. And with an attribute called s-color, so stroke color, I can actually change this very quickly so that it matches the color of the theme of my website. And that's how simple it is. With one line of HTML, you can add animated and interactive icons. We've added an animation that plays on click. Now we're going to add an animation that plays on hover. So before we can get started, you need to have Lottie Interactive included into your web page using the script tag, which is available at the Lottie Interactive GitHub page. So copy that and paste it at the bottom of your web page. Once that's done, you can get started replacing your icons. So here we go, we're at the camera. We can delete the old icon, declare a lottie interactive element, and set its path to assets, animations, and my path is instagram.json. And then we're going to add an interaction, which is hovering. So hover. Close off the element, refresh our page, and 1, 2, 3, there we go, on hover. Lovely. Super simple, and it's a nice surprise when users hover over icons and they're actually animated. So currently with Lottie Interactive, we've got our animated logo playing, we've got our stacks playing on click, and we've got this camera playing on hover. Now we're going to check out morphing and switching animations. So before we can get started, you need Lottie Interactive included on your web page. So head over to the Lottie Interactive GitHub page and copy the script tag and paste it at the bottom of your web page. Let's get to changing these icons. So for these last couple of icons, I'm going to replace the fingerprint with an animated one. So Lottie interactive element, once again, set its path, fingerprint.json, interaction, we're going to use it as a switch and close that off. And last but not least, we're going to be using our plug that we animated earlier on. So here we go, change that to plug in. And this is going to be our final morphing interactive icon. And it's going to look great, I'm sure. So here we go, refresh. Dun, dun, dun. Let's start off with the fingerprint. So because it's a switch interaction, it's playing on click, going to the last frame, pausing, and then playing in reverse once you click again. So that looks great. And our plug is playing as a morph. So when you hover, it's going up to the last frame, and when you release, it's playing backwards. And that looks really cool. These are great interactions, and I just think they make the website a lot more fun, make it feel more alive. And it's also great to surprise the users when they find out that you have interactive icons. It's just a great feeling. These last few lessons, we've added Lottie Interactive to our web page, as well as various different animations and interactions. In this lesson, we're going to cover play on show, which is an interaction type which plays the animation when it's displayed on screen. Before we can start doing that, if you haven't already, head over to the Lottie Interactive GitHub page, copy the script tag, and place it at the bottom of your web page. Once that's done, we can start implementing the play on show interaction. So here on our website, I've created a new section which is going to house our animation, which is going to play on show. So let's get started with that. So scroll down, just under the lighthouse, play on show. So once more, let's declare a Lottie interactive element. The path is the same, assets, animations, and Lottie logo. And very simply, the interaction is play-on-show. All right, I'm going to scroll to the top to not spoil the experience. Refresh the page, scroll down, and voila. We've got the lovely Lottie logo playing as it's displayed on screen. Wonderful. And this is now the final result of our website. We've got an animated logo, we've got looping animations, we've got interactive ones. These are all looking great and lovely. Really cool. We've got animations playing on scroll, playing on show, and even synced up to the cursor position. A great variety of different animations and different interactions. It's been my pleasure teaching you about lottie animations and integrating them onto the web, and I hope you have a lot of fun integrating them onto your own websites and applications. Congratulations on completing my Awards Academy course on lottie animations. This course is the result of 2 years of tinkering, experimenting, and playing around with lottie animations, which I truly believe will become the future of interactive and animated content. I'd love to see your creations, so feel free to reach out on any of my social media accounts. Take care and get animating.